Today's session actually involves a lot of people who are working on these solutions, on practical solutions, which we can actually use in the laboratory. Now, one such thing, if I can talk about it, is embryo selection. Now, I have 4 embryologists in my laboratory, and every time we sit and try and select an embryo, we just fight because all of us have different opinions. And when I look at data from pre-implantation genetic testing or even morphokinetics in the laboratory, it's just baffling. So we have Michelle here. Now, I have the privilege of introducing Michelle. Michelle is an academician. She's also an entrepreneur and has extensive experience in the field of healthcare and medical research and also advanced AI technologies. Dr. Perugini has a PhD in medicine and has actually spent over a decade in stem cell research and stem cell biology. She's founded a global technology company called ISD Analytics, which uses AI to predict human behavior uh, on whole populations. So she can already predict what kind of reactions you're going to have to a talk. She's also the co-founder of Presagen, which is an AI company that connects clinics globally to build scalable AI medical products. Her first product was Life Whisperer, which I'm sure all of us, especially a lot of us in India, are using. I'm not sure about the others in Asia, but I'm sure you're participating in those trials. And it's now commercially available and it's available globally. And it's actually a product that helps us to assess embryos. So, Michelle, without wasting much time, I'm going to hand it over to you, and the floor is all yours.
Thanks so much, Keshav, and it's really great to be here. Welcome to all the participants and happy Chinese New Year to those in the region. It's the year of the ox and I figure it has to be better than last year. So happy New Year. I always like following Jacques because he gives such an elegant kind of chronology and history of time, and that was a really good introduction to some of the advancements that are being made in, you know, Internet of Things and automation and AI and even just general data access. As Keshav mentioned, I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Presagen. We're focused on building scalable medical products with a focus in the women's health sector. Life Whisperer is our product around embryo assessment. We're approved now in 60% of the global marketplace. We're being used by clinics across the world in Australia, New Zealand, Europe, Southeast Asia, India, and many more to come. We're scaling very quickly. But I don't actually want to talk today about embryo selection and AI because you've heard that before. You can go back and see the presentation I gave as part of this series in the middle of last year if you want some more information. There's plenty of information available on our website. What I actually want to talk about today is the digital IVF lab and how connected data and collaboration is actually key to being able to drive technological advancement within the IVF lab. And I really like this quote from Accenture last year: connecting data from disparate sources like labs, collaborators and the real world will drive meaningful insights. Technologies like advanced analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, extended reality, and the Internet of Things are today mature and affordable enough to enable real transformation of the lab. And I think this is really true. This really hits home to me because A, it's all about connected data. B, it's all about underpinning of technology. And the reason that this transformation is happening now in IVF labs and in other labs is because of availability of data, the on-demand access to, you know, massive amounts of computing power, and the availability of tools like AI to drive efficiency and improved patient outcomes really from the lab. So it's a really important topic, and I really want to deep dive a little bit into my views and some of the things that are happening around the connected data space. So connected data is a really important driver of the digital IVF lab. It underpins all of the major technological developments that we're talking about: Internet of Things, automation, AI, all of them. It's key to transformation. It will drive integration and automation of those lab equipment that will allow synergies and efficiencies. It will deliver improved patient outcomes through standardization, good quality control, which is so incredibly important in this space, and we're already seeing a lot of that happening. It'll deliver efficiencies to be able to allow clinics to service more patients. So it's not about replacing AI, for example, for embryo assessment or selection. It's not about replacing embryologists. It's about freeing them up to be able to service more patients. It's about putting more objectivity to those assessments that need to be made and having the AI as a second opinion, as an assistant within the laboratory environment. And I think it's really important to view these technologies as tools. Connected data is incredibly important to be able to feed the new age technologies like artificial intelligence, to enable scale and impact right across the fertility sector. And it will really, I guess, similar to what Jacques mentioned in his talk, it'll enable IVF labs of any size to really access cutting edge technology on demand through the cloud without any large capital costs. And that's pretty incredible. That's a massive transformation that's happening within the industry. And I just want to put out there that when I talk about connected data, I'm not talking about necessarily just data within the lab, but I'm actually talking about data also globally between IVF labs and IVF clinics, because that's what's actually required to build these unbiased AI and to bring the global knowledge base and the global intelligence of the IVF sector into each and every lab to improve the process and impact patient outcomes. And connected data doesn't actually mean moving the data, seeing the data, breaching data privacy or ethics. It's about leveraging global perspective and knowledge from data that's distributed around the world and bringing that knowledge base through an incredibly efficient cloud-based systems into the lab, regardless of size or location. And connected globally diverse data really truly can create the world's most powerful, unbiased and scalable AI. And it will be representative of different patient demographics, different clinical environments, which is incredibly important when we're considering how we leverage data for technologies like AI. But collaboration is key to driving globally connected data. Developing AI at a single institute level is just simply not scalable. It's also not commercially or technically viable. It's actually quite expensive, and I want to walk through what that process looks like to give you an appreciation of how difficult these systems are to develop. But also it will be biased to the patient population of that single institution, meaning that every time you take it to a new clinic or a new demographic environment, it will need to be retrained or recalibrated. This is very expensive and not scalable. The AI algorithm also is only a really tiny part of the upfront and ongoing cost of operationalizing this type of technology in IVF labs. To develop AI within an institution requires developing the algorithm, building the software, maintaining and supporting that software, building in compliance and cybersecurity and validation measurements, in many cases, regulatory approvals, computing infrastructure, and of course, it requires dedicated professionals that understand that technology and how to build it for its intended purpose. So what I want to do is just step through what is actually needed to build scalable AI, and why are we always harping on about having to access, collaboration being key and having to access globally diverse data. Well, actually, it's not about more data, it's about the right data. Many believe in the AI fallacy that will tell you that more data will improve the AI. It's just simply not the case. It's all about the right data, and that right data needs to be globally diverse. It needs to be data that is representative of different patient demographics, different clinical workflows, different clinical settings, different imaging equipment even. And only if you train an AI that is based on those diverse data sets will it be able to scale into different clinical environments. And one of the important things about getting the AI to scale into different clinical environments is it means that it can be delivered at low cost and at scale, which means that the end recipient, which is the IVF clinic or the patient, doesn't have to pay for the failures of non-scalable AI. But in order to access that globally diverse data set that underpins the AI, there's many challenges within the healthcare sector. And so it's quite difficult actually within the constraints of data privacy laws to access globally diverse data sets to build the AI. And in the IVF sector, that data is locked up in different clinical environments located all around the world. Data privacy laws prevent the movement of that data outside of different countries. And what you would normally do when you're building an AI is you would normally bring all that data from the different clinical environments or different IVF labs, you'd bring it all into one central spot, you'd train an AI, and then you would deliver that AI into the clinical environment. You just can't do that in the context of data privacy laws. Clinical collaboration is also key. Data is locked up in all these different IVF labs and clinics distributed around the world. Clinics know that their data has value, but it's actually difficult to realise or monetize that value as a single institute. And they're looking for ways to collaborate and come into the mix and help build these systems, but they can't do it alone, and their data is only relevant in the context of the larger global data sets. And data quality is a huge issue. Even 1% of poor quality data can significantly impact AI scalability and accuracy, so there needs to be ways of managing that data quality issue. So how do we overcome these challenges? And what I want to just step through, and this is not a plug for our company, this is really some broad-ranging approaches that are being used by others as well. But one way that we've done this is through building a global cloud platform that essentially allows us to collaborate with clinics all over the world to access their data whilst keeping their data local in their region. So we never move their data. We've also put in place a royalty-based incentive model, which essentially incentivizes clinics to come into the fold to help co-create products with us and contribute their data, and in return receive benefits from the sale of those products globally. This is a really nice way of them getting a better understanding and appreciation of the AI build process, of them contributing to that process and being able to create value from their data without giving it away. And to solve data privacy issues, we've got a really unique federated learning approach, which is being used by others like Google, and there's other approaches as well to overcome data privacy, like some blockchain approaches. But we use federated learning, and what that means essentially is that instead of bringing all that data into a central location to the AI, we actually send our AI out to the data, and it learns iteratively from those data sets distributed all around the world without ever breaching data privacy and without ever having to move that data. And lastly, I just want to mention a really powerful, unique data cleaning technique or algorithm that can automatically detect errors in data, even errors that cannot reliably be detected by experts. And what this allows is for us to access data that's distributed around the world, to train on that data without moving it, to incentivize those clinics to contribute that data and collaborate on the AI build, and to assess the quality of that data as it's being contributed and as it's contributing to the training. And this is how we solve the problems around developing scalable AI medical products. And this slide is not really designed to bamboozle you, but it's a little bit complex, and it's complex intentionally. The circle on the left here shows the process of AI build all the way from data collection through to the AI algorithm development, through clinical trials, regulatory approvals, and finally to use in the IVF clinical lab. This process is really underpinned by technology and team that be able to facilitate the access to that data, which I just spoke about, which is so important. But it also provides enterprise-grade clinical delivery system that's compliant with laws like HIPAA and ISO 13485 and GDPR in Europe. So it's considerate of all of those different kind of data privacy requirements, which are so very important in this space. But what's important is clinics and IVF labs are actually at the centre of that process. They can be involved as much or as little as they like in the global data collection through the data portal. They have visibility into the build of the AI, which gives them an appreciation of how their data is contributing to those projects. And it gives them kind of a window into the process without having to bear the cost or risk of development of the AI products. And in terms of the IVF lab, AI, as we know, is already having significant impact. AI is being used for embryo selection. Our own product, as I mentioned, is completely on demand through the cloud. It's a pay-as-you-go AI for predicting implantation potential. And there's other time-lapse-based AI algorithms that are being used and implemented in the hardware systems. You know, there's oocyte and sperm assessment that's being looked at in terms of AI. Cooper Surgical has a PGT AI assessment product. You know, many are looking at, including us, are looking at non-invasive embryo genetic assessment, either through cell culture media methods or through imaging, you know, stimulation protocol optimization, and even, as Josh will talk about, you know, facial recognition for donor selection. It's actually quite incredible, the breadth of how AI can really impact the IVF lab and the IVF process. So what I wanted to do was kind of finish up. I don't want to talk about our embryo selection product too much, but I did want to talk a little bit about Life Whisperer, just because it's a really good demonstration of the scale that can be achieved. This is an AI application for embryo selection in IVF. It's been built collaboratively with IVF clinics globally. It's been tested. You can look at the publications. They're all on our website and publicly available. It's an on-demand system. This is the next wave of technology delivery into IVF labs, and in fact, not just IVF labs, but pathology labs and many other labs. This cloud-based delivery where you only pay for what you use. You can access it within minutes. We can set up clinics within minutes anywhere in the world. They can get straight on and access the system. There's no hardware requirement. Completely camera agnostic, works with time-lapse or non-time-lapse systems. You know, it's been reliably shown to perform better in real life as well as in clinical studies. And, you know, we've demonstrated the scalability of this approach within IVF clinics globally. And I think this is the power of AI. But one of the greatest benefits of AI, and I'll finish on this slide, is that AI really still needs to be practical for clinics to implement and for IVF labs to implement. And AI solutions that will create the greatest impact will do so if they apply across multiple parts of the IVF process. And so, you know, we and others are very interested in, you know, genetic assessment of embryos, oocyte assessment, sperm assessment. I mentioned some of those other broader applications of AI in the IVF laboratory, and it's really going to be about, you know, how do we bring those technologies within the one platform, one delivery system, so that IVF labs can really get the greatest benefit out of access to these solutions on demand through the cloud. Thank you so much. I'm happy to take some questions.
Michelle, that was phenomenal, and my brain is exploding now. One thing, there's so many questions here. People are worried about job replacement and they're worried about cost. I think you addressed some of those, and honestly, ultimately, I see you seeing this as something that helps with burnout and cost, because we can do so much more with less people, because this will add to our power. I thought the fact that you used the words second opinion was really compelling, because I do, and given your background using AI to predict social behavior, I find that really fascinating, because we have all this data and we're going to take it, but that doesn't necessarily tell us how is the patient going to view this. You know, you have, let's say, a mosaic embryo, and with 30% implantation rate, a 20% miscarriage rate, that is going to be looked at so differently by different patients. My patient that is desperate for a baby, doesn't want to use donor egg, has done a million IVF cycles, never gotten pregnant, is saying to me, Dr. Chen, if that embryo has a 1% chance of pregnancy, I'm taking it. Then my patient with 5 miscarriages, who's totally traumatized and would rather, you know, just stick a needle in her eye than have another miscarriage, is going to say, I cannot take that embryo. I cannot do that again. I cannot get pregnant and have another loss. Is that still human, or can we pull that into AI as well?
Oh no, I think AI has an amazing ability to bridge that gap between the patient and the clinician, because the reality is expectations are very high when patients go through IVF, and it's very stressful and traumatic for those patients. And they're looking for transparency. They're looking at how is my IVF lab or my IVF clinician making the best possible decisions on my behalf, and are they using all of the available technology to be able to make those decisions? Now, AI is just one tool. There's many ways of assessing embryo quality, for example. But what we found is that so part of our system, we deliver a really beautiful patient report, which our patients love, because what it does is it shows a schema of the different grade embryos as per the Life Whisperer score, the different score embryos in the brackets, and how many patients within each of those score brackets have become pregnant based on our historical data set that it's been built on. Now, what that tells them is that even if you've got a very low scoring embryo, you've still got a significant chance of getting pregnant. Right, so this is about embryo ranking, and it's about selecting the best embryo first time. It's about reducing the time to pregnancy for patients, and about increasing transparency and using technology as an assistant to get a second opinion, because the AI sees different things than the human eye sees. So they're complementary to each other. And I think that's really important.
Exactly.
It's not an adversary.
That's what I love. And I think our tendency is to see it as an adversary when really it's a collaborative effort. And that's the huge potential behind it. And I wonder if people could also input personal data into AI, like you could have included in your report a questionnaire where people answer questions like, how would you feel about this scenario versus this scenario? And you could use some of that data to help people decide, because part of our challenge is understanding what the patient wants. And even the patient, because they do not speak our language and do not have our background, they don't even know how to articulate the questions, and we could potentially assist them with that. I'm thinking that while we're talking, hopefully Josh is bringing up his presentation, but we have so many questions for you, Michelle. There's like a million questions here. Thank you so much for that presentation.